Thank you. So Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Bob. You may recall that the new middle school located in the southern part of the district was identified as a critical need by a community-led facility committee with Mayor Eisentraut serving as one of the committee members. And in November of 2019, our community approved a levy that included the construction of a new middle school across from Hawthorne Elementary. Can you hear all right? It sounds like I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Yeah, if everyone else can mute your things except for Mr. LaRose, that way, because someone's got feedback on one of their speakers.
Okay, that sounds better. So our design inspiration is an outcome of the events that have taken place across America this past year. As a design team, we discussed the division across America and how the building design can promote unity, peace, and harmony. The tripod building footprint was inspired by the peace symbol, with each of the three legs representing the aspects of being, that is mind, body, and spirit, and also representing a student's well-being, mental, physical, and emotional. You will notice that the front elevation is angled out, and that is symbolic of arms that are reaching out to welcome you. Each of the building elevations does take into consideration the adjacent spaces. For example, the south elevation gives consideration to the adjacent home properties. This elevation looks similar to the new elementary school that was designed to blend in with the neighborhood, with the MI homes that flank the new elementary. The north and east elevations take advantage of the green spaces by utilizing large areas of glass. And the front elevation that looks across at Hawthorne Elementary has more of a traditional facade while pulling in elements from all of the other elevations. And one of the prior slides, you saw the exterior courtyard. It incorporates a subtle use of the peace symbol that can be seen from the second floor and as shown on this site plan, which I think we'll show at some point during the presentation. So we have committed to a very aggressive schedule to open the new middle school in August of 23, just 1 year after opening the new elementary school. And we do want to thank the commission for your time and consideration, as well as Mr. Fisher for his guidance and his advisement during the design process. Thank you.
Bob, do you have anything else to add?
Eric, I'll let you go ahead, and we'll certainly be around to answer any questions.
I appreciate that. Who's sharing right now? Is that Trevor?
It is.
That's right.
Okay. Trevor, since you've got it up, why don't we go, and I'll just run through my thing with your thing up. Why don't we go to the kind of primary site plan and we'll kind of start there. All right. And if you wouldn't mind just kind of, zooming in a little there on the front, not that one, but the first site plan. That's great. All right, so pretty much for the purposes of our code, generally speaking, staff would approve any of these items that would be, to send them to, we would approve zoning certificates that would allow them to proceed with multiple entities, including the Franklin County Building Department, Columbus Sewer and Water, in order to proceed with their building plan. We also would have it reviewed from our engineers who have reviewed this site. And so instead of an administrative review, since this is a public entity, on public ground. It gets redirected to our Planning and Zoning Commission to kind of do this. And for today's action, it's fairly simplified. I would say this is even a little bit simpler than the planned district, which the commission reviewed for the elementary school. Really, the criteria that we're looking to review in this case, outside of the engineer's review, who's an entity of the village, are several items. One is, we'll just start with the basics, is site coverage. And Trevor, if you don't mind, I think you've got a lot of these things on the plans on the main front sheet. If you could zoom into the text, because as required, the architect and engineer put everything as required to code, whether it's landscaping or coverage in this case. So if I recall correctly, on the main page, you have these items kind of listed out in the, yeah, right there in the middle. If you can zoom in, well, that's landscaping. Let's not use that one. The front page, I think, has what we're looking for coverage. That's boxes and stuff. Well, oh, there it is, zoning information over on the right. So, well, this will be good. So as you can see, the max lot coverage allowed is 80%. In this case, the proposed lot coverage for their lot is 38%. Building height for this zoning district, which by the way is like an R2, it's like a limited suburban district area, is 35 feet at the height for the roof. And the building height in this case is 33.5. So they meet that requirement. Setbacks here also more based. Our code, allows for a school in this district, but the settings of all the setbacks are actually more designed for houses. But that's what we have to work with. So the rear building setback is a maximum of 50 feet. Now, in this particular case, Trevor, if you can jump, I think it's one of the last pages where you've got all the measurements on it. We can kind of show them. They greatly exceed that. I forgot which one that is too. Now it's beyond the grading plan there. It's toward the back before you get to the elevations. Keep going. That'll work too. Is it that one? Well, from memory, if memory serves, one of those sheets has got it on there at about 190 feet from that rear building in the back to the building line. They more than exceed the 50 feet setback. Side setbacks are, they've got it marked at 30 feet, but in fact, I'll tell you that it's less than that. It was a combination of 20 feet for two sides, again, based on residential. So you can see there, that's good, thank you. 115 feet at the corner from a side setback from the residentials. And again, yeah, that closest corner was right from memory, 193 distance to the rear lot line. Front lot line, they have to have a 30-foot building setback by code, and they've got that marked in that dashed line right across the front there. And from the right of way, their closest they come is 123 feet, taking away 30. They're 93 feet from the building setback itself. So they meet all of their setbacks without too much difficulty. So height, setback, building coverage. The next item that we look at then is the landscaping. So if you want to jump to the landscaping cover sheet. And right in the middle, you've got your, I think you've got your data right there. Zoom in on that middle for me, I appreciate it. So yeah, so basically from our code, they've written in the ground coverage and tree requirements. They've got their square footage on there, and their required trees are 49. So that they've thrown in there. So meet their requirements. So not going to be a problem. And then I think we'll jump to, I think the last thing then is go back to the site plan, and where we've got some parking numbers. We've got to talk a little bit about parking. And in fact, Trevor, yeah, once we show the site plan real quick, and then bring me up that adjusted sheet that we talked about the other day. Perfect. Yep. So, well, this isn't the highlighted one. This is the right one, right? I think it is. You just didn't have the highlighted one. That's all right. So this one's important. Is this the, yeah, the required spaces are 226 based on our code. Now, the school has got some interesting requirements here because in order to get some of their lead credits, our code is old, right? So it has an old set of requirements in it. It doesn't give, it's not looking, written back in the 80s. It's not looking at current energy standards, environmental standards from water quality and all of that good stuff that go in there. And it just looks at it from a straight impervious surface requirement per square foot. And that's our code. Now, what they've done here is they've said, okay, well, we have to have, in order to get our credit, in order to meet our lead scoring, we can't exceed 158 on site, right? Now that, of course, is less than the 226. Now, what's interesting here is that they do have an additional parking overflow on their other site, which is right across the street at Hawthorne. And so when they count that, it's 271. Now, our code actually allows for this. And so I'm going to, if you can unshare your screen, I'll share mine real quick. Thanks. See if I can do this correctly. One second, folks. Sorry about that. Okay. So under 1282.04, for those of you can see my screen, I assume, there is a joint parking area. And it allows, shall be on the same lot as it used to be searched up, the owners of two or more separate uses may establish a joint parking area to provide the total number of required off-street parking and loading spaces for all such combined uses, subject to the approval of council and to such conditions as may be imposed by council. So as it turns out, they will have to go to council for the approval of their joint parking area, subject to the approval of this board on all other conditions. So that's the only item that's, fortunately for them, they don't have to go through a zoning process, but they do have to go to another meeting at council and see council about getting that approval for their overflow parking from Hawthorne to, the middle school. One thing I'll say from a best practice standpoint is typically when we look at these kind of sites, we typically, when we have flexibility, rely on the users to know how much parking they need. The school and Bob, or even Jeff, perhaps you want to speak to your knowledge about the spaces you provide and how that function works real quick for the commission.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Trevor, if you can bring back up, Eric, if you could let him share. Trevor, if you could bring up the where we've done the analysis. So the other four middle schools in Westerville, and they go up to Genoa Township, but three are in Westerville. They have currently, and we're designed for a much bigger student count than what we're designing for. So we're designing for an 800 student count. And again, if you understand the demographics of school districts expanding, they've done 10 years and further projections. The reality is a lot of Westerville City Schools area is built out. So they're not looking at too much additional growth in the future within the school district. So the reality is that with this new middle school, they are going to be able to reduce the student count at the other middle schools, but our new middle school is designed for 800 students. The other middle schools, as you can see, their parking counts that they have are are well under what the zoning code shows, and we're for 800 students, if you look at a parking count per student, uh, we're pretty much over what the other middle schools have, and the generally the day-to-day parking is absolutely well served. There's has not been an issue even at some of the larger capacity schools. Um, Genoa Middle School is one that has a very similar situation where they do have an adjacent elementary school that they would share parking with if there was an event going on. But even then, very rarely does that come into play. So the district, and I will turn it back over to Jeff to make sure, or Jeff or Scott Dorn, to reassure you that the 158 parking count for this middle school is more than enough parking, and with the overflow parking at Hawthorne, we should be very, very well set.
So I concur with what Bob said. As we look at the new middle school as compared to our 4 existing, we more than exceed the need for this new middle school based on our experience with the current middle schools.
I'd like to also add that while we are planning this building for 800 students, it's anticipated at opening with about 720, with some growth over time, but it'll be questionable whether we actually hit the capacity of 800.
Okay. Bob, do you have anything else there? Okay. All right, so that's parking. They do have to go to council for approval of this part of the plan. In addition, Mike Flickinger, our engineer, reviewed several items here with the site. He had no major issues with the site plan. He had no major issues with site drainage. They will still work out, as engineers do, work out some final details of that, and that's typical with any of these developments. And they'll have to meet what the engineer's final approval is prior to completing construction. The final item that is particularly, I know, of interest to the commission and will be, of course, to council as well, was the traffic impact study. And the comment from Mike overall is the study is in good shape. There was a number of review comments he sent back. The major item, that obviously from the standpoint of the middle school and its construction deals with far view and how that is to be adjusted. So the initial review shows that, they're going to have to add some left-hand turn lanes according to our engineer. We're going to have to work out on some widening design criteria for that. And that is something that, since that's related overall to the flow and to the parking, council can also add those as conditions as part of the code when it goes in front of them here in the next couple of weeks. So those are that'll give time for everybody to kind of work out some plans to put in front of council as well. Since I'm assuming those were not ready per our discussion the other day, aren't ready in time for today's discussion.
Yeah, Eric, we would like a little bit more time.
Absolutely, and you'll have it.
Yeah, thank you.
Council has to see it anyway, so that's going to be for them to decide. With that said, I open it up to the commission to ask any questions or clarifications at this point before we talk about a motion.
Eric or Bob, is there any anticipation that the widening of roads due to the traffic study would that all take place within Minerva Park right away, or would any homeowners' property lines be affected?
No. It's all going to be along Farview, which right now both the new middle school and Hawthorne are, it fronts both. Yeah, he can show some of it on here, but it pretty much extends from the right of way. They've got space outside of the paved road, which you can kind of see in dotted lines right there. So, and since if they need more space, the school is obviously in control of their own property lines there, and I'm sure will be working to, adjust for that where necessary. And this is all something that we'll obviously handle along with the engineers.
Thank you.
I had a question about the landscaping. Is that the first page, like the final plan as to what's getting planted where, or?
Sure, let's go to that real quick, Trevor, if you could jump on that page there.
I see that's about the only thing we really have. Well, there's some parking codes, but the landscaping is really the only, code that we have to kind of oversee, I would say. And
Well, yeah, we don't really dictate, except there's a list of trees. We don't dictate too much on the private land, what they plant and don't plant.
well,
I'm
there's rules about coverage.
sure the school district will take some suggestions if you want to see something.
What's that?
But I'm sure the school district will take some suggestions if there's some specific trees that, yeah, Bob shaking his head, yes. So if there's something specific, as long as they meet the planning code, which they have exceeded, then we're good with the plan in general. But if you want to make a suggestion on trees, and even doesn't have to be tonight, by the way.
Well, our code reads that they're supposed to submit a landscape plan.
That's it right there.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. That's my question is that, and in the landscape plan, aren't they supposed to designate what trees they're planting where?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, well, that's what I'm trying to understand. I see that. So those are the trees that they're planting,
Yes,
and they've specified which ones are going, I don't know how they,
yes, they have them all marked and I mean, they're there.
okay, I'm just trying to, I know there are people who are very concerned about the plantings in the village. So I want to
Sure.
make sure that we've got all the information that we're required to have.
Sure, and again, I'll just state, if
I wasn't able to figure out what trees going where from this plan.
does
I see
anyone want to jump in on that or help him out?
Yeah, hey, Dave, we do have our landscape architect on, Dave Guapone. Dave, do you just want to give a brief overview of how you read your plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the plant list, there is a code associated with each species. So if you would zoom in on the plan, for example, if you were looking at the south property line that's adjoining the residential area, we have those existing trees, which you see kind of clouded along the property line that we are saving. And then we're also adding some additional trees to kind of fill in the gaps. And you can see we're tagging each tree with a code. So for example, we have
Okay, I
three
see. Okay,
LAC, and that would be 3 trees. And if you look on the plant list, that code, you can read what the species actually is, of which that would be a London plane tree.
all right, now I'm up to speed.
Excellent. Did I answer your question appropriately? Is that what you were?
Exactly, thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Dave. So yeah, and again, if anyone has any tree suggestions, I know if things have come a little late because we put things together here, in the last couple of days. Again, the school district, I'm sure will take suggestions. If anybody wants to talk about subbing out trees, I'm sure Dave will be happy to take some emails and we can send something over to Bob and Bob will get some answers back.
Yep.
Okay, so Eric, this might just be a little bit more for you and I. As we're both aware, the traffic is probably the #1 concern. I guess I don't want to speak for everybody. The emails that I've received, the phone calls I've received, the traffic study is the #1 concern and complaint that I have with the residents in the village. So as soon as you're able to get me the information with Mike's comments and different things, I would like to get that put on the website immediately. As well as these additional plans, so residents are informed as to exactly what's going on. So that's something that we can work on tomorrow. The parking, I know, goes to council, and I would just, I'm one of those parents that my kids have been at Heritage for a total of 5 years between them. There was very few times that we did have to park in the grass, but yes, there were days in which we had to park in the grass for certain events. So obviously parking is something, we just want to make sure that people aren't parking in the grass and that kind of stuff. So I
Sure.
believe having Hawthorne right there, that's going to solve all of our problems. Yeah, as far as that goes, having that should be fine. Are we going to talk it on? Maybe I'm going to step on toes right here. This really doesn't have anything to do with their current plan, but I know that this is already what somebody's wanting to know. Where is the sports events going to take place? Like, this is the actual school, but football stadium, track, things like that. Where are those going to sit on the property at this point?
They're not on this property, Mayor. They're going to be over on Hawthorne's. Is that right, Bob? You're going to get another plan down the road, so you'll get to see another plan.
Okay. So, because again, it's missing, so I just want to
Yes.
tell people why it's missing, because that has already been a question.
Trevor, if you can jump, there is a baseball field on site. There is a basketball hoop, I think, in the back too. If you can show a clearer picture of that on one of the other sets there. Maybe the color one's got everything. The next one up there.
Yeah, I saw it on one of them. There.
Yep, we've got a couple fields. That's the basketball court in the back there, full court. It's actually two, I think. So yeah, they have several things and some fields on site. And then Hawthorne is going to have, as has been explained to me, it's going to have the stadium and track and everything on the other side after they get a redesign. But they're not there yet. They're going to get that over later to us.
Totally fine. I just know it's missing on the maps, and I know that there's some people that are making sure that they're going to have access to stuff like that.
Yes, and Mayor, if I can add, so the stuff that's being considered tonight will need a motion from Planning and Zoning to approve so that they can go ahead and get their certificates to proceed forward under their schedule, conditioned upon them getting their parking approved and traffic at council. That way, those things are still handled at council, and they're going to need time to do some more items on traffic and prepare for that meeting. But there's no reason for us to hold back them.
No,
Columbus and getting other things handled with water and building
I
department.
also would completely agree with you. Brady, I don't know if you want to take it from here, if you want me to do. But at this point, Lisa, I know you were the one that had a couple questions the last time. Did you have any questions? Anybody else?
Right.
Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, this is Beth. I had a question about, in the traffic study, will it include like how many buses or are going to be at this site coming and going morning and evening?
I think the school district can talk about that. And obviously the traffic study will be, as a whole presented to the council, and Mike Flickinger will talk about it. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but your traffic study deals more with vehicles on site as far as traffic vehicles per day type items, correct?
Well, the traffic study did deal with all vehicles, so buses included. What we're anticipating right now, and it won't be any more than this, but we are anticipating about 17 buses. But do keep in mind that the middle school opens and closes earlier than the elementary school, so there will be no interaction between that traffic. So our traffic study basically shows that there's very minimal impact to peak traffic demands. Again, the way that we've got this set up is we've got cars and buses separated. We've got a bus drop off. We've planned for the appropriate number of buses. Again, the district at their school level, what they will have is supervision for car drop off. They will have people out that are directing traffic. As Jeff LaRose put it the other day to me, it'll turn over quickly with cars. It'll be better than the airport drop off that we're also used to. So the reality is cars and buses will be separated, but for the middle school, they are going to be at a different time than the elementary schools and not interact.
Yeah, and Beth, all of this will get, this section of it with traffic and the parking will get handled at council. So more of your questions will be answered. They've got to go work with our engineer and get some things finalized before everyone's ready to present and talk in a little more detail about how that road's going to be handled.
Well, I just was wondering, I mean, if it was in the traffic study, because I'm sure that that's a question that'll come up. So that we would all have an answer to that. So it's really not a matter of approval or not approval. It's just a matter of information. So,
Yes, I'm sure your council will want to know the same thing. So that'll be ready for them. Everyone will get that at the same time.
okay.
Yeah, the traffic is the only thing that I've heard over the last year. You know, somebody did ask how close it would be to their back property line. These diagrams definitely show a lot of that. So I think the biggest concern that I have heard from residents is definitely the traffic. And I would agree. Dropping kids off, you guys pretty much have it down to a science. So as far as dropping kids off, they go in one. I can tell you you know, on rainy days, it's worse. I mean, I've dropped my kids off. I drove my kids to Heritage every single day. So if you want an expert opinion on drop off, I got it. So no, I mean, and it was never an issue. I mean, there were days it took a couple extra minutes, but the rainy days were the worst. When it was sunny, it wasn't. This really doesn't have anything to do with this diagram, but this is just a general overall question. Are you guys at all concerned knowing that we don't have any sort of sidewalks or anything like that for the kids that are walkers? Like, is that, not that we can change that and not that you guys can change that, but that's also a question that a lot of people have. You know, the middle school, early in the morning, it's still dark. So now we're shipping most of our kids to walk even earlier in the morning. Has that been a concern for you guys?
Well,
I'm
I don't,
not asking anyone specific.
Jeff, go ahead.
this is Scott Dorn.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know if it's a concern, but we would certainly love to have more kids walking or riding their bikes to school. It's just healthy, a healthier option. The newer portion of VMI homes certainly will be able to walk. You know, from an activity standpoint, with the track on the other side of the street, we are planning on creating public access coming from the west side of that, where you have your pool.
Okay.
And so maybe that would allow for some more kids to walk or ride their bikes from that direction as well. So we would love it, but I don't think we have a concern.
Good answer. I'm
Yeah,
done.
The
So
additional sidewalks would just allow us to reduce the number of buses from where we are at 17 right now.
okay.
So it sounds to me that, you know, the role of planning and zoning is to approve this plan, and then of course to approve or deny any variances. I don't hear really any variances that are not going to rise to the council's level. You know, the parking issue will be addressed by the actual elected officials of the village, and the results of the traffic study will again make it to the elected officials of the village. So with that, if there aren't any other questions, I would make a motion to go ahead and approve this plan so that it can move on and we can get started. Is
Yes,
there a second?
officially conditioned upon it going to council for parking and traffic.
Yes.
Second.
Second from Councilman Benedetti. I suppose we'll actually take the roll on this.
That'll be good.
So Sam,
Gotta unmute. He's nodding yes.
Sorry, aye.
Beth,
Yes.
okay, I am a yes. Mayor,
Yes. My unmute.
you're good.
No, I'm good. Okay.
Tony,
Aye.
okay, and then just for good measure, would the non-voting members like to express any thoughts?
Nope, I agree. I agree as well.
Okay, with that, it appears that the motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Westerville School System, and we will get with your professionals and get a date for seeing council.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. 20 or 40 minutes, that's not fair. I wish we were done. We have a lot to do. Just kidding. Okay, I think we're good.
All right, cool. So moving forward with what's left on our agenda, we decided, remember, to punt the area number 1 to make room for to make time for the presentation we just had. So we did want to discuss, continue to discuss the amphitheater. And I know that Beth and Eric had both done a little bit of work. So Beth, I think we had Eric kind of roll the work you did into what he's about to talk to us now about.
Actually, Beth did a nice job on her presentation, so I would say on that, she saved me some work, actually. So Beth, if you'd be so kind, if you share your screen there and show your presentation, that'd be awesome. And then I'll jump into what I wanted to talk about.
Great.
If I just put up a PDF, will that work? Or,
Yes.
okay. And then, let's see, share screen. Oh, I guess I got a lot open here.
I just hope I never have to share my screen because it'll, that'll
Whoops.
never happen.
Can everyone see that?
Now we're.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw you had the one up, you had your presentation up, and I think you jumped to your, what I sent you earlier.
Landscaping plan.
Oh, okay, well, let's see. So it might be, I've got 2 screens, so
There
is
it is.
it, now do you see it?
Yep.
Yes.
Schiller
Okay.
Park.
Whoop. So let's see, where is the full screen? Here we go. Okay.
It's been a
All
while
right.
since I've been to Schiller Park, but that doesn't look like the stage that I'm.
Well, I looked up Schiller Park and that was what came up on the came up when I
Really?
mean in German
I don't
Village.
know, I was drinking that day, maybe.
Oh, well, and the other thing I saw was down here on the lower left where this, they had a number of different stages that they had built onto the stage or stage sets for different performances. So it may have looked completely different depending on what performance they were giving, if they'd built out the stage. So anyway, so since Eric had mentioned Schiller Park, I put that in there. And I put these together mainly just because I started looking like, okay, what sizes are amphitheaters? What do they look like? Materials. And I put this together just so people could look at them and start to get an idea or sense of, what we would like to see down there in the space. So I'll just.
I know
click
the
through.
ones that had,
So this one I pulled up because it had the screen, and I know in the last meeting there was mention of having a screen doing, nighttime movies. So I thought this was a interesting example of how they had the poles there, and that they would just pull up that projection screen as necessary. And then I put up here a list of some of the considerations that were brought up in the last meeting, and then a few more that I thought of as I was putting this together. So let's see, size of stage, accessibility on and off stage. We will need an ADA ramp onto the stage in addition to steps, or maybe just a ramp, or just maybe the ramp. I've seen some with just a ramp and no steps. do you know, should there be a backdrop or not? There's lots of different types of seating, as you'll see, everything from concrete or stone or grass to actual built benches, or even there, I think there was one with wood benches or no benches. So, you know, all those are options. Restroom facilities, storage, a roof, yes, no, you know, that's kind of like, is that something that's wanted, not wanted, future? There were a couple of them that came up that showed projection booths and actually hard built projection booth so that they get the projector up high. Accessible seating where people in wheelchairs would sit. The sound for the stage, whether you want that to be a natural amp or have it some type of amplified sound. And then, of course, we talked about acoustics. There's lighting, parking, trash and trash removal, and ongoing maintenance. Obviously, any type of structure in there is going to require additional, rather than just having, you know, the zero turn mower zoom through there and cut the grass. There's going to be a lot more trimming and maintenance to the space overall. And then scheduling of the events, like who's going to handle that and how's that going to be handled? And also, like, if you have a performance, who is the organization that pays the band? And if a band costs a certain amount, then what does the ticket price need to be? Or how big does the audience need to be to support having a band that's paid, or some type of performance that's paid? I mean, that would probably come with some type of a business plan. And not to say that these all have to be answered right away, but I just wanted to start documenting some of those items that are out, questions that are being raised that will need to be responded to at some point. This one, yeah, so this one I pulled up because of it had this stone stage and it had these buildings on each side of the stage. So I thought that was an interesting or similar treatment. It also was concrete. The stage was concrete on this one. And this one, the Scott Amphitheater, the trees gave it really natural look to it. The consideration with this type of thing is the trees affect the sight lines to the stage, but on the flip side of that is the trees inside the seating like that provide shade. So in the middle of summer when you're having a performance, it's nice to have some type of shade over the audience.
We're not allowed to have trees in our dam, so.
Oh, on the dam, I wondered about that, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Because of the
not
root
allowed.
structures, okay.
Exactly.
And then this was just like, this was a grass on the stage. This one had brick on the stage. This backdrop was an actual built structure. And
The
then,
one right there is the one that looks like it would fit right in with the one in the bottom left corner. Looks
Oh,
like
this one?
it was photoshopped on top of our dam almost to me.
oh, yeah, there you go, done. But yeah, so then starting to show some roofs. This one, of course, is a very natural rustic type of structure on that one. And then this was more roof structures and again, various roof structures, stage materials. There is recommendations for having something at the back of the stage if it's built up so people don't tumble off the back. This one they have like, it looks like restrooms or storage or something here on the back of that stage area. But see, they have the ramp up and on that. A ramp coming straight onto the stage. And of course, this structure was pretty utilitarian and modern looking. And then these were more open kind of ideas. This one was some seating, some hillside, fencing around the back, the ramp up onto the stage. Again, ramp up onto the stage. And this one had a projection booth. And then this one was, actually this one I was at, this one's from a place in New Hampshire. And so this one is quite, the Victorian structure on it, but it just, when I was there, the band was sitting on the stage. So whatever size this was, it wasn't big enough because they added steps and they added a platform on the front. But it did have a beautiful view of the lake while you were sitting there and the band was playing. And then this was like, these are only 2 sheets out of a Boy Scout manual. They put together a whole plan and consider their recommendations, things that they were looking at. And there were several other pages in this PDF if anyone wants it. It was more detailed about the sound and the acoustics and some of the construction of the seating and that type of thing. And then this is another option is to just leave it as a folly. And follies were in the late 1800s, they were incorporated into actual landscape design as a focal point for the garden or for the landscape. So that's another option I wanted to put out there that doesn't even though it is the leftover amphitheater portion from the amusement park, we could take and shore up the masonry there so it isn't crumbling anymore, but just incorporate it into the landscape and have it be just, well, as they say here, give it the landscape a sense of majesty and magic. So just as another option to put out there. I think that's all I had to say about those things.
I
I
appreciate
would
that.
say that those all look like the size that we're looking for, or
Yeah, when I was going through looking at, some of them were huge, but I tried to pull some that were kind of the smaller scale because we're pretty limited in the area that is available down there. So.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Beth, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Samuel Young.
Joined the meeting.
All right.
All right, so do I need to unshare
Yes.
or?
Yes, if you could unshare and then I'll share my screen.
Oops. Let's see here. I gotta find out where I just lost the view. Now, how do I get back to the?
If you like the
view?
shot in the upper right, there's a view, hit the view and exit out of your, there you go. You're actually at the bottom now, there's your share in the green button in the middle. You should be able to unshare it with you should have like a red stop button, red, green somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'm scrolling and it's not coming up.
So the other option is in the upper
Stop
right.
share. It's at the top. There we go.
Sweet. Okie
Okay.
dokie. I'm going to share mine here. 1 second. All right. 1 second. Okie dokie. All right. Following up on Beth's kind of theme where she's giving you some different ideas, I'm going to show you some more overviews and schematics and then we'll jump to the actual site itself just to kind of give you some, some specific views and understandings of what you're kind of limited to down there in what we'll call the depression. And in general, the design criteria, as Beth pointed out, is, you have your stage. Your stage can be elaborate, simple. I would expect that, we can keep it fairly straightforward and simple as long as it meets some of the, the basic standards of stagecraft itself and the, I don't think the acoustics are too much to worry about when people are orating. And, from the standpoint of whether we have bands or what we have down there, I'm going to leave that to, council and their policies at the end of the day as to how that gets handled, because many things can be determined, on how sound is dictated and what type of arts or, again, stage, craft is done down there. So with that said, let's just kind of look at our basic designs.
I have a really quick question.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
For the ADA compliance, does that mean we would have to build like a ramp from the top of the dam, from the side down, or?
So I'm gonna put it real basically. I don't know as to what our specific requirements are for an already existing condition that we have there, right? That is something we're gonna leave once we get out of our kind of conceptual phase, when we have to actually utilize a design architect, whether Beth is part of that, or whether we have another professional engineer to assist us with that. That's going to be a determination of code at the time, and it may even have some legal counsel involvement as to what we have to provide. I'm not saying that it's wrong or right to provide it. I'm saying that we should know what our requirements are, and then obviously from a final design guideline, when this gets designed and built and approved by council, that'll be the final say. I would suspect that we would want to make it some form of ADA accessible, right? That seems appropriate. But again, I don't know. This is kind of a unique condition with a dam and already existing conditions down there. And we may or may not have to do a full bore set of, ADA compliance guidelines here based on what we've got out there, right? I mean, our pathways, slopes and so forth around, our areas to be inherited, from a public standpoint are not ADA compliant, as an example. So, our slopes on our sidewalks have to be ADA compliant within the right of way. So we're getting into two areas, one within, right of way accessibility, and then this is, public ground accessibility. And there are going to be some different standards. So we're going to put a pin in that one because that's definitively going to come back up, but we'll get the answer from a professional standpoint at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Because that could get expensive trying to get a ramp that's at the right grade down to the stage.
It could, and again, there may be a simple solution to it, and I'm going to leave that to both what's required and then what can be designed, right? So we'll get into that later. No need to, we just can't answer it right at this moment in time. All right. So getting back to stage design, simple stage designs, in general, I think suit us best down there. One second. Sorry, guys, I had to jump off real quick. Okay, here's a kind of an interesting example where we have a hillside, and you're looking more at the amphitheater seating area itself. The stage is to the right, but it kind of gives you an idea of how you could build it into a hillside. Now, we're not obviously going to be able to build into our dam structure, but it doesn't mean we can't put something directly adjacent to the structure without impacting it. Again, this all gets back to what can be engineered. And there's cost to that, but we want to make sure we keep our options in mind open in that regard. Oops, sorry, jumped too quick. Here's kind of a different one, and I'll shift this around too, because that way you can zip in, but you can kind of get an idea at the lower portion here. Zoom in here, where you can kind of see and it's for this red line as you're looking across, but you can kind of see the height. It doesn't have to be real high. You don't have to have a real steep slope. You got to have, some space, obviously. But from a distance standpoint, you're not looking at a long distance either. From his standing point, you're looking at maybe somewhere between 50 and 60 feet from the edge of the stage. So again, you can make these compact and fit your space areas that you need to. And this is just kind of a schematic about how it moves out from the standpoint. Again, we can see it doesn't have to be a big area. And I'll just kind of shift this around. I just kind of wanted to pull things together, since we're looking at kind of more site. This is an interesting one because again, small, compact. You can choose to have a stage. You can choose to have a backdrop. You can meet your safety needs while also having kind of a very unique look. Again, I think there's a lot of possibilities to keep it simple and keep costs down. And I'm going to reshare my screen just a second. I'm going to stop because I'm going to go to a different part of my computer here. All right. Now, I'm hopeful by the next meeting, I was talking to our engineer, we do have some access to each EMH&T's dam drawings, and we should, if we're lucky, also catch the topo, around this area here. It's close enough to where they should have the conditions on it, but I did not have a copy today to work with. So this is the aerial view with some topo lines, so it kind of gives you an idea of steepness, the contours. The two columns are here and here that currently exist in the overhead aerial, and you can kind of see from the contours that it's a fairly flat area. It drops off. These are 2-foot contours, so you're dropping off from this high point right in the middle, then low point in the middle, and then you're going upwards on the hill. So you're heading up a little bit until you hit these steeper areas. 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, and it gets real steep over here. Now, what I kind of wanted to show you, let's see. This distance from this column to this column, oops, should open that back up, is about 35 feet when I measured it. So it's somewhere between 35 and 37. This is not entirely precise, but it's close enough for our purposes here. And then you can kind of design a stage, with these tools. Well, it's not. So we just make something. Just make a pentagram, for example. I almost get to 1,000 square foot on that design. I had another one earlier that was 1,200 square foot. So that's your surface area. That's a pretty good sized stage based on, and right now it's got a little bit of an arc in the front. So actually it will be a little bit bigger if you follow the existing little 1 foot high stone wall that's right in the front there. But the purpose here is to kind of show you that, hey, you can fit something on there, and it's nice and simple, get you an easy 1,000 square foot plus or minus. And then it's really just a matter of how you would handle your seating in this area, right? I mean, we've got some hillside to work with, and maybe, there's a way to do that. We've got a rock, we've got some other things here. This gets steep over here, and you've got to work your way around this kind of riprap that you've got here. But you have room to work with, around this zone here. So the stage could even be, there's nothing against this. Is it feasible to relocate the existing pylons and wall? Yeah, it can be done by an expert, and it can be turned, and you could even run in this direction then, so I want you to, keep that in mind, that it doesn't have to face this direction. In fact, if you change its angle, faced more in this direction, you could get more seating and you wouldn't impact the wall, right? So a couple different thought processes as it kind of works out from this side to this side. This may be a better way to do it. So, and that's pretty much what I have for the evening, just to kind of keep the ideas going on this. Happy to, I guess, open for discussion.
I would just toss out there that, again, thank you for this. This is really helpful. And even just this drawing that's on our screen right now, I think is really helpful to be able to start to envision things being, with the small amount of money that we're working with right now, relatively small when you're talking a project. I know that we're trying to figure out what this is going to look like at the end, but a thought might be, while we're trying to figure out what it's going to look like at the end of the money as well, would be that we could have a functioning stage without any seating whatsoever for a year or two. We want to be mindful of what it would likely look like eventually. But you know, movie night with folks sitting on blankets on an incline, you know, we'd have to do something about maybe or maybe not about the rocks there, or at least make it softer to sit on. But you know, a nice little friendly stage like similar to what you've drawn. Have to figure out what goes on top of it and behind it and around it. But even without seating, you know, in the near term, I don't think would be a bad thing if it would, you know, make the money go further.
Oh, absolutely. We're not far away from movie night, you know, just with what we have right there.
And if there was electric run to that, you know, you could have small musical performances, you could have small stage performances, you know, it would all be dependent on how wet the ground is and what the weather is that day, but that's an outdoor stage, right?
Exactly.
So we were discussing at the last meeting, you know, the hope is still to get a mason out to kind of give some thoughts on different size stages. Do folks have thoughts about what Eric has drawn here? Is that too big for what you were envisioning, too small for what you were envisioning, and by how much?
Eric, how big is the stage the existing stage compared to what you think you got drawn up there? Is that,
Sorry. Sure. 1 second while I make this happen here. So the existing stage, just to give you an idea, I'll show you where it's at here. So here's the pylon here. And just following it around where the arc is essentially.
yeah,
That's just to give you, that's 35 feet, roughly speaking, right? So that's all that kind of exists right there. You know, as kind of to give you an idea of where pylon to pylon, the front of the stage kind of came out to the original audience back in the day, right? So all I'm saying is that there was more to it, like there are most of these stages that we were showing you. And I'm drawing it simply here, but there definitively would be some kind of area for them to work in, right? And there's a 700 square foot stage. You know, you could make it whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, from the standpoint of function, I would say probably 1,000. You probably don't want to exceed 1,500 square foot, just to give you an idea of what that is. Let's just have a quick look at that. Sorry.
Is there a reason we can't just leave the stage natural, the floor of it natural like it is now?
Well, it will get mushy. I mean, if you really want people to be able to function without tearing it up, you know, you should have some solid surface. You know, that's just a matter of maintenance. Otherwise, imagine what happens. It just stays bare dirt. Eventually, people sink in it. You know, it leaves a lot less ability to function properly, except on very dry days.
Lisa, why would you want to have it natural?
Now that said, hold up. That said, as you noticed in some other examples, it could be a maintained surface of some kind, like nice even grass. But again, it all depends on the drainage, on how they have that designed, like a sports field, right? But you're still going to get mushy and wet. So it's just, there are different examples of it.
Well, Tony, I think that may be dependent on what we decide to do with it. Maybe I don't.
One reason why you would need to have it natural.
Well, it would save money. It fits in with the environment. Again, you know, are we having bands come? Do we know that? Do we need a place for the bands to play? Or will it be more, as Beth says, folly?
So,
or
I would just put this into your minds. I would say, look, a hard surface of some kind allows you to make a number of decisions flexibly over the course of time. Whether your council and the residents would like to have just poetry being read, or if they also want to include electrified bands down the road. A hard surface leads to all those options being open over the course of time. And I'm a big proponent of providing for flexibility and allowing the community to decide the function of it over the next 20, 30 years, right? 50, 60, it changes, right? So you always kind of want to leave something from a design standpoint and a functional standpoint, as flexible as possible. And I think it doesn't get more flexible than a nice flat, hard surface from a variety of performances that we can all imagine.
Well, I would add that another consideration on the surface of the stage, would be acoustics. The natural stage would provide more absorption of sound, whereas a hard stage has reflection of sound. And any type of a wood stage would also have more of a absorption of sound. So it's just how much reverb that is going to be happening down in that area.
Yep. And that's very true. I mean, I would say.
And
look,
then,
we're
and the
trying-
second part would be drainage. So it's going to you're going to have some type of drainage off of that stage, whether it's a slope on concrete or brick or whatever you're doing up there. There would need to be drainage if it's out in the open like that.
Yep, agreed.
And I was looking at that amphitheater that the Boy Scouts had, and their stage is 12 by 24. So 288 square feet.
Yep, it's a nice little one.
That's small, right?
Yeah, that would be, let's have a look at that.
I guess, from a what are we going to do with it kind of standpoint, I think kind of like Eric had alluded to, is trying to build an amphitheater that has multiple possibilities. I think I can't imagine anybody objecting to that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
Well-
I think, there's no desire to, create something so large that it's an eyesore and that, any performance is going to look tiny and out of place. That said, again, thinking about something like Schiller Park, you can have a small intimate wedding on that stage that feels small and intimate and not like, oh my gosh, this stage is so big, why are there two people up here? But then they can also do, Shakespeare. Now they have different topography for sure. But I think that kind of stage size, if we can go on the larger side, 1,000 square feet or so, without it looking gaudy. And I also think that, height is important here. If we're going to build an 8-foot tall stage, it doesn't matter how small it is, it's going to look gaudy.
Absolutely.
And where it is, it doesn't need to be more than a foot or two off the ground.
Yep.
And so, some of those illustrations or the pictures that Beth had pulled, I like the thought of, a stone front and possibly grass, on top of the stage, as long as it's, able to be maintained and kept smooth, because then it looks, it looks like it fits the village. The dam has got, and the lake have rocks all over the place. You would have a stage, a riser built out of rocks, but when you're standing up on the dam looking down, you're still seeing mostly grass. I think there's definitely a happy medium that could be made. That said, that's likely more maintenance than just pouring some concrete and calling it a day. So I think in an effort to try and, move forward, I think we're still gonna, before we get into materials and specific sizes and heights and things, I'm still hoping to get input from folks on overall size. Again, Eric's got one right here that looks to be almost 750 square feet. I know that it's still hard to see from a map without going out with a tape measure and a chalk line and figuring things out. But do we have thoughts? Do folks think this looks way too big or way too small?
I think it looks I mean, it's about maybe a little bit bigger than what's there now, and I don't think that's bad.
Yeah, and I'm, and going back to that picture, and we'll at the next meeting, we'll bring that too. If we're trying to at least meet the original historic criteria of what was here. Definitively, it was this long, you know, across from point to point. We know that. And there was room for them to work in the rear. So you know, off the top of my head, I'm confident in saying, look, I know it was somewhere, it had to be somewhere close to this square footage, you know, for them to wander around and do their shows based on the illustration that we saw.
Eric, there were never shows there. That was well put in. This is my understanding, put in by whoever was building the houses at the time, just really for a fun thing. My understanding is it was never used.
No, hold up, though, prior to any houses being designed back in 1895 timeframe, there was definitively.
No. This was put
there
in
was definitively
after.
an amphitheater there. And
It hasn't been in
definitively
since.
it's on the original map. I've seen it. I'll pull it back up again. So I don't know where you're getting the story there. There was something that was in use at the time.
The village historian,
Who's that?
I
Bob
understand-
Stewart?
Rob
I understand what
Stewart.
you're saying, but there's historical documents showing that this, prior to any houses even being built after this was closed, that there were clearly, from an amusement park standpoint, there was an amphitheater here that is that age. That's what's left of it. Okay, on that spot, there is a map that demonstrates that. I've seen that. So, no disrespect to the historian who is talking from a marketing standpoint, but it's historically linked back to this original time frame. So that's all I'm saying. So, and you know, and I remember learning about this back in planning courses at OSU as well, and they went over this in you know, Minerva Park. So it's in the coursework too. Anyways, from the illustration and the time frame, you would need to be between those pylons, and you would need to be a certain square footage to function. 300 square foot's pretty small, and I was playing around with that earlier. It's hard to get to there without a weird looking stage, right? So I think you're minimally somewhere in the 750, maximally, you know, to not look gaudy, I think you're around 1250. You've got some range to work with here. This is an 800 square foot, you know, octagon or hexagon, sorry. So
And that's where you think it is now?
that, I think you between the two, I'm just playing around with distances, you know, there's nothing there that definitively shows where the outline of the original stage was, right? Except for those pylons and the front wall that arcs out, right?
Right.
So you'd have to work off that, and then you're going to have to ad lib a little bit to make it functional. So, and essentially that's just more, that's more a matter of design and recommendation at this point, right? So
What was the kind of, when you were looking at these different amphitheaters, what were the stage sizes that were on those?
So I knew someone, it was you, Tony, who's going to ask me that. What we will, they range, right? They range, as Beth has stated, even the one, you got 200 square foot, but the ones that people work in those areas, we could measure Schiller Parks, actually. That's actually a really good idea, just to give you another example. Turn this off real quick, sorry.
Well, not to get too hung up on size of stage here, but I'm just wondering, what's the process for the, I mean, I know that there's this grant money out there that's what we're kind of shooting to get, you know, the matching funds for that. But in terms of the approval process from this committee, does everyone on this committee, I mean, has it been like everybody's agreed that, yes, we're moving forward, that the amphitheater, you know, like there was a vote that happened before and everybody was like, yeah, let's do it. And then, so now there's the planning stage and the grant came through, and now there's a planning stage. And then all this information has to go to the council and then they have to approve it, or
So-
I'm trying to understand
Sure.
what
So
the
Beth,
process is to
Yeah.
go through that this will be approved.
so Beth, there's obviously a couple different ways, a couple different pathways to make these things happen. The one that we're kind of pursuing is that planning and zoning under its duties has the ability to make recommendations up to council. Now, you're going to be able to conceptually make the recommendation that, you know, council back some type of project here. Okay. Now, you're going to meet a stage here pretty quick, as we can speak to from experience on those of you who've served on the commission, a number of you have, where, for example, the landscape architect is a good example. At some point, it has to go back to council with the recommendation, because council's got to appropriate you money for certain professional work. Now, on this particular grant application, there's a little bit of professional work, right? I don't think, it's not in front of me, and I'll have to re-review it for the next meeting, but you don't have to do a whole design at a certain point. You do have to get the building plans. You do have to say, hey, we've got money appropriated, but there's stages for the grant itself to be allotted money. And council is going to have to be a part of the stages of telling you it's okay to get your cash, essentially. So we will have to, sorry, I'm a little bit distracted while I'm doing this. You will have to essentially get to a conceptual point here, and you will have to, ask, say, council, we want to do this. Here's our recommendation, right? So you're going to be able to say, hey, we think it should be oriented this way. We think it should be a certain size. We know that materials are cost X, because we can get quotes, quite frankly, without having to get too crazy with stuff. We can get an idea, a rough idea, to get some idea about what those things will cost. We know the mason is going to tell us a certain amount of money for A, just rebuilding it, B, moving it around. We can get options. So we can put things in front of them and say, hey, we're fairly confident we can be within, say a certain amount of money. Maybe it's $5,000, maybe it's $20,000 plus or minus, right? But hey, council, we need money to go ahead and get an architect to kind of do this all up so we can get a proper estimate at this stage. And have our plans that are ready to go to building, in order to officially receive our grant. And oh, by the way, you also need to make sure you have to appropriate the matching funds. Well, in fact, you have to appropriate all of the funds because it's a reimbursable grant. So council's got a few points in this whole thing to make decisions. At this stage, I will tell you that you are making generally conceptual design. That one's about 1,500 square foot, at least for the front part. I think, if I'm not mistaken, is this back part of the structure? It must be the back too. So yeah, the shadow here's messing me up. Must be this whole piece. So it's going to be, this is about a 3,000 square foot structure easily. What's the measure of the exterior? It's not all stage usable. Oops. There, 3,800. Not even done yet. So it's a big, that's a big stage. So there's Schiller Park's example. But yeah, Beth, going back to your question there, you're going to get enough of the detail together to be able to ship it back to council saying P&Z recommends that we move forward with this project. Here's some general criteria. We need A, B, and C done by council, right, to move forward, and then see what council says.
I would say that the one thing that we had talked about in the past that I recall is that, we were willing to go forward with tuck pointing and trying to just to shore up the existing structure. I mean, that's something I think has already been.
That is absolutely correct, Tony. The mason's coming out. Obviously, we've had a bit of a snow Mageddon the last couple of weeks. As soon as this thaws up, he'll go out and give us some options. And so you're going to have those to, preview both, just tuck pointing, rebuilding it, moving and rebuilding, right? So depending on his assessment of the, what's left and what condition it's in.
One thing I would caution, I know when they did the dam, a lot of people were very upset how many trees were taken out. Of course, that had to be done, but I think, I don't know if the size should be dependent on that, but you might be getting a lot of feedback if you take a lot more trees out. Just a thought.
No, it's understandable. And there's areas to preserve trees, but a lot of stuff's been wild growth down there too. And if you're going to rebuild the stage, you're definitively going to have to take some trees down. A couple of them might be good species, a couple of them might be crappy species, and we can have an arborist give us an opinion on them. But at the end of the day, with any construction, you're going to cut trees. And the nice thing about trees, you can regrow them, as we know, as we're planning to do within the village. So we'll make sure that we're environmentally friendly one way or the other.
Well, that's definitely true. And we're certainly getting a lot more trees, but you can't put in a 50-foot tall tree easily.
No, it takes a few years.
And yeah, we'll obviously need to go, you know, as it warms up, go take another look at where things go. I mean, my recollection was that the bulk of the trees were to the left of the stage as you're looking at it. And so there's a good chance both for, for sound screening and for view screening that to the left, again, as you're looking at the stage, there's going to be a whole bunch of growth that can stay there either way.
And room to add more if we're inclined.
Sure.
So inclined.
Yeah, I think the only trees we know that are going to have to go at this point are the ones that are actually growing up through what's left of the structure.
Yeah, trees right in here. You've got a whole grouping that's out here, and there's even more growing on this hillside here. So there's a lot of trees that will not need to be touched, but definitively you're going to have to clear something in here.
So again, in an effort to try to move forward, if we're thinking about we'll say 800 to 1,500 square foot stage, does that seem unreasonable to anyone?
Sounds good to me.
And this is, obviously subject to the mason coming out, actually getting a look at things, just trying to make some progress tonight. As far as, narrowing one thing down that we think we can. We've looked at all these stages. I'm sure everybody has a different idea of what it would ultimately look like, but if we can get close to the same page on the size.
Yeah, I think 1,500 sounds huge. That's almost my house, a little bigger than that. That sounds huge. But again, it depends on what are you doing with it? What are your plans for it? 800?
Yeah, I would say again, your sweet spot's in between 800 and 1,200 for this area.
I think too, it will depend on how much seating you can get in there, because you don't want a stage that's gigantic with just a puny little amount of seating.
Yeah.
So I think the two have to be balanced out.
Yeah, and the space. I would agree.
Yeah. So Eric, did you say that there is a as-built grading plan or topo out there, or someone's checking on it, or?
Okay, so to repeat, there is obviously work that's been done on the dam. There are as-built for the dam. There would be grading and topo for the dam. How deep they got into this area, and I'm kind of optimistic that it would cover some of this because it's so close. I don't know just yet. I have a link. It didn't work right. I have to have the engineers resend me the link. Hopefully I'll have that in a couple of days. And then I'll be able to look at it and see what we've got. And if it's something good, we're in business. Get it out to everybody. So.
And then just so everybody had voted on this and was on the planning and zoning, like there was a vote and everybody's like, yeah, let's move forward on that. Is that?
Well, this was part of the discussion regarding the green spaces, and this was identified as one of the green space items to focus on.
I don't know that we ever had a vote. I don't know if it was really that
doesn't need to
official,
be-
was it?
It doesn't need to be formal. There were a number of things that people worked on, if you recall, including your lily pond.
We came up with a plan that was approved by the commission.
Yeah.
Well, but Beth's asking if there was a vote.
Right.
I don't know that we ever had a vote.
We'd
No,
have
I
to
would
go back
agree.
and look at
I
that.
would completely agree. I think what Beth is kind of, I'm not going to go crazy in detail on it, but this is part of the green space plan. I think everybody was on board. How elaborate that we were planning on going has never been discussed. We were
Correct.
told that we got the grant, but that was kind of a surprise. And we basically took, in my opinion, this, pushed it in front of everything, and we started running with this in comparison to many of the other things that we had been discussing and talking about. And that was what I was alluding to in the last meeting. Because I don't think that it was, I think it's been just kind of shoved that this is what we're doing. That was my feelings last week. And I know I kind of took it off and kind of was making that point. So Beth, I think you're kind of asking the same things that I was asking last week, and I'm not saying that not everybody's on board 110%. I was just a little taken back by why this is now the number one priority and who decided this was going to be the number one priority. And it became the number one priority because of the grant. And again, I'm not saying that people didn't want to, but I think that was my question, Beth. And no, there was never not, that's kind of where we ended up.
Yeah, well, I think that was kind of like my general thought that.
That's what I was, I kind of got what your question was.
After last week, when we went through all the, I'll just say stuff that was going into the green space. And I guess from previous presentations I had been in, it had sounded like the green space in the reserve area was going to be a green space, like more of a, I want to say more of like a naturalized park. But what I was hearing last week was that there's all these structures being planned for the space. So, so I just wanted clarification on how that direction was arrived at. And like if it was, just trying to understand how the process on the committee works. So.
Well, we're in the beginning stages of this process and the first step of the process was coming up with ideas or, for what we were going to do in the different areas.
Yeah.
And like the mayor had said, I think the amphitheater came to the front of the line because of the grant the grants being applied for. So, I mean, that's my understanding of why.
Well, I'm not saying that any right or wrong or that anything about any of all of that. I was just, in terms of like overall concept for this space, it was different than what I had thought it was going to be, but which, that was just kind of like my preconceived idea, I guess.
Well, a lot of people
when I heard green space and, reserve area and that type of thing, but that didn't bring to mind, disc golf and, that type of stuff. So.
Well, and so Beth, that's why you're here, right? So the duties of the Planning and Zoning Commission per code are not, we don't have a million things to do, but the number one thing the first item of our duties, we're supposed to conduct studies and surveys relative to overall planning for growth, development, redevelopment, rehabilitation, renewal of the village. And then we're supposed to make those plans, reports, and maps and make recommendations to council as we feel are in the best interest of the village. And so what the last council did, or what the last commission did, was identify these numbers of areas that we wanted to work more on. And that's what we're doing right now. So the reason that, what we discussed at the last meeting was kind of an overview of where we were. There have been no decisions for structures, including the amphitheater, made yet. That's the process that we're undertaking right now. It's entirely possible that we get to a point where we decide we don't want an amphitheater at all. That will be tough for us to get future funds from the state. The reason that the amphitheater has risen, to the forefront is because there's free money for us sitting out there. That's 100% the reason that we're talking about this now instead of any other project, is because there's free money that expires. But it's also entirely possible that we put together a really good plan to council and they decide they don't want to do it. All we do is as appointed officials, we're all sitting in here trying to pull different ways until we can all pull together. And then the goal is to, come up with a recommendation that we take to council. And so that's why I'm trying to get consensus on the stage right now. But if it's, if the stage is something that folks by and large just don't want to do at all, then we're going to have that conversation.
Well, this is a bad thing. I would say one of the downsides of the Planning and Zoning Commission is that there's a lot of work can be done only to have council say, sorry, we don't want to do it. And I'm, unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast.
And we did take, at the end of last year, we took our, vague plan of these different green space areas to council to try and get their, guidance and direction. And the consensus from council was kind of like, yeah, we see what you've done here, which we are taking as a sign that they'd like us to bring them something more concrete. And so with the fact that we can't give them a plan on everything all at once, we've got to pick and choose, what we think is most doable. And I think Tony and the mayor would agree that when you talk about what is and isn't doable to council, the first thing that they're going to ask is, where's the money for it? And this is the one situation with this amphitheater where we have some money.
So we never got a definitive answer of the top 3 things that they wanted us to work on or whatever we were requesting. Is that correct?
They did, they actually liked, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, they liked everything except restrooms, right? Am I recalling that correctly?
Yeah, I think the council was in favor of, the entire plan,
Mhm.
except for a permanent restroom by the basketball court, was really the only pushback the council gave on any of the recommendations.
Okay.
It's just up to the commission, I think, to decide, well, what projects we would like to present to the council for funding, I guess. And I know, like I had said earlier, that the one thing the council and, the mayor, I think, are on board with is shoring up the existing structure with regards to the amphitheater.
Yeah, it's not hard. We've got $100,000 plus what council throws in as part of the matching grant. I think there's even though it seems like a lot, depending on how grandeur you go here, it may not be enough, but as Brady has pointed out before, there's going to be multiple years of phasing and getting money for a project as it grows. The simplest thing here, I think, is to decide, let's start with stage size, height. I'm assuming we're going to keep, I think it's kind of part of the project. You should keep the existing pylons and wall, whether they're relocated to face a different direction or they're kept as is. And there's other expenses with this, but I think we start talking simple and then we get into materials and then you'll have something to recommend up to council and we can definitely get some numbers for a number of these items.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that maybe 1,500 square feet is a little big, a little bigger than it needs to be. I'm thinking, 8 to 1,000 maybe might be a better estimate.
Agreed.
Yeah, I was thinking 1,000. 1,000 seemed pretty reasonable to me too.
All right, so what? So did you say that the Mason guy's coming out when things warm up?
Yeah, he wanted to come out. Obviously, we had talked right before our Snowmageddon stuff started a few weeks back, right? So it just got too cold, and he steps out of town right around this time, anyways, because it's just he can't do any work in the extreme cold outdoors, right? So, but he was back in town and thought he would get out here, and then all of a sudden we've got 8-10 inches of snow in places. We walked over there, but you can't safely get down in there with snow on the ground. So he's coming back as soon as this melts, and he'll give us a definitive, some definitive options.
Prognosis.
Yes. So we're probably a couple of weeks from that, but we'll get there.
So we will in setting the agenda for the next meeting, if folks think it sounds good, we'll go back and start a discussion on that improvement area 1, which is the Black Sycamore side. And then we will, I'd like folks to keep thinking about the amphitheater. And hopefully between now and the next meeting, we can maybe get the Mason out and start to, get some ideas on that. My hope is still that we can get, a sandbox put together, and then we can ask the community, mostly, the folks whose backyards are looking at the amphitheater, to provide input on what they want that, on how they want to come play in that sandbox. It would be great to get, their thoughts and input. And the one thing that we need to remember is that the function of the stage, who will play there and how, and what hours and how much it will cost and all those things, those have nothing to do with P&Z. That those will all be made at a higher administrative level. And so we need to make sure that we don't get bogged down in those conversations, but that we, yes, we do have to have the purpose of the stage in the back of our minds, but we should try and do something that is, vanilla for a stage that can multi-purpose and can be used a lot. And with the input from the community, I think we can start to make some progress. And again, there's always a chance that we realize that this is just not something that folks want. But I think we, with an option of free money, I think that it's, our duty to try and move it forward. So if that sounds decent, as I said, the next meeting will be that improvement area 1, which is that area over Black Sycamore. And it will just be, let's start talking about things we want to see and see if we can all agree on 1 or 2 things. And then the next meeting, we'll try and agree on 1 or 2 things, and we'll put a plan together to take to council on that improvement area.
Are you talking about the pond next to Black Sycamore, that area?
There's an
We had
active area.
the pond area, and then as you walk kind of down the trail and to the left,
Okay.
there was some more green space over there
The
that we thought about incorporating.
And we're just thinking about what we might like to see.
Yeah, what we'd like it to look like. I know, when we walked it last year, there was
Mhm.
talk of, mulching a path around the pond for a walking path. There was a talk of, maybe another bench there. Somebody said something about trying to stock that pond if it was possible for fishing. Talk of the seating area down by the loop. Just everything that folks want to see, and exactly how, the hope is that things, nothing will be as easy as the lily pond, but the thought is if everybody stares at something and says, yeah, that's exactly what I want it to look like, then we can move forward. And, Lisa, I think you missed the last meeting, but the lily ponds, I think we're pretty much ticking that off. We've got the grant for it. We all pretty much know what we want it to look like. And the mayor's been given authority to put a bench or a table out there, and we're going to mow that little tiny area to make a seating area. And so that's one spot where, if only they could all be this easy, but I think that's going to be a great little area for folks.
Well, it's not done yet, so easy to plan, but a little work.
Right, but we've identified funding for all of the elements. It's, obviously moved along further than anything else. And, and again, we were all in agreement on it, which is impressive.
Yeah.
So Eric or Mayor Hughes, if anything else that you guys would like to add this meeting, or?
No, I think that's good. And I think will be helpful to send out a kind of a purposeful checklist, we'll call it, for different elements, right? To keep it simple and kind of see what people have to say about that. We're talking about things like height, square footage, materials. We can get into materials a little bit, wood versus concrete versus grass. It will be good to get kind of a little bit of a feedback from all members. So we'll find a way to get something out to everyone to kind of go through that at the next meeting.
Yeah, and again, I think, the hope is that, Eric, if you can help give us a large menu that we can help narrow down into a smaller menu so that we can go to community members and say, you know, instead of what do you want for dinner, we can say, here are some things that we'd like to cook for you. It's a whole lot easier when folks can pick within when they have to come up with something on their own. But again, we're definitely seeking their buy-in.
Yep. And just remember, everyone loves chicken.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
No, Lisa, we kind of do need to talk about, the lily pond is not as easy as it sounds. I think we kind of decided that we were going to do something with that, but we have a list of a lot of different options. Lisa had sent it out to everybody. And this is just, first I'm going to say this. I feel like I threw Lisa under the bus and, you know, basically volunteered Lisa to like do all of this stuff.
I'm happy to.
I know you are, but you know, I also want to make it a point that, you know, I'm not expecting Lisa to be the one to do everything on this. So she had reached out to Mad Scientist, as you guys are aware, got a quote for me. And then we kind of had a little discussion and thought, well, that's really not enough. There's other things that need to be done. And so she actually had gotten four different quotes for added elements to the basic quote. We've already done our first reading with, because it's a contract, I have to go through council, 3 readings and 30 days. And we've already done reading 1. However, the amount of money that I did for reading 1 was solely the most inexpensive thing, which isn't going to do what we need it to do. So, you know, we have X amount of dollars in the Parkland Fund, but, you know, again, how much do we want to invest of our own money in this particular thing? Because none of these projects are going to be free, and there's only so much money in the Parkland Fund. So how much do you guys want to do in this lily pond? We know that the edges, and Lisa, you're probably going to have to chime in here, but we know that the edges all have to be, the grass all has to be dead and all of that. So that's going to cost money. The first thing Diane asked about for that was, you know, how are they killing it? Making sure it's an herbicide or whatever. So that's going to be one of the discussions, is how are we going to kill the grass and what is everybody okay with, and exactly how are they going to do it, Lisa? And then the next part is, what else do you guys want to do? Because again, the grant is only $2,500, but $2,500 is just this much of the project. So where do you guys want to go from there? So Lisa, tell them what we're looking for, because I'm kind of looking for your guys's, because this is going to be issue number 1. We're taking it to council. Council's going to approve it or not. Of course, they're going to approve the basic, but how much do we want to spend on this? So go for it.
So I sent, I don't know if everybody saw it, but I sent an email, I think last night, kind of outlining the latest quote from Mad Scientist. And I had a good discussion with the gal about the herbicide that they'll use. I'm not crazy about those. I suggested, I asked about tilling ourselves. They think it's, and I've heard this from a couple sources, it's really not a good alternative, because it sort of brings up the weeds. You know, you might get rid of them, but it brings them up eventually. Their 2 options are the herbicide, which basically just gets rid of stuff. It's an aquatic safe herbicide. They're feeling like if it's used correctly, and of course they know what they're doing, it's minimally harmful. I mean, we're talking about putting in pollinator plants, so we don't want to put in chemicals that are going to kill the pollinators that come. If they do it that way, it can be done spring. We can be planting. Actually, I'm not sure how long after, but I think relatively soon after. So we could get the plantings done by, I mean, I would think sometime in May, if not before. The other option is solarization, which is basically putting down big tarps in the middle of summer to kill off all the plants, you know, the space that you want to not have what's growing there now. I think that was about, no, I don't think I have it. it seems like it was about $500 more to do that area. So the kill off with the herbicide was $31.89 compared to what was that, $25.95, Tiffany? $25.95. So it was maybe $600 for them to come and kill it off. And then I want to say it's like $500 more for the solarization. I've got that quote someplace, but I don't have it written down. The other thing I asked them to do, because when we had walked through, we were talking about that area, Brady, that you were talking about the picnic table and mowing back to it. We had talked about maybe putting some sort of plantings there. I had mentioned recently to Tiffany, maybe you could put your sunflower plants there. So I also asked for a quote to do the herbicides there. It's a separate quote. And that was, they're saying an area about 50 by 75. And that's about not quite $200 more. So that would bring the total up to $33.75. So you've got $25.95 just to do basically the plan, taking care of the plants, that sort of thing. If you add them killing off with the herbicide, it's $31.89. And then if you add that other area, it's $33.75.
So we're
And then
talking
we would
about
just need to go by,
$600.
oh, go ahead, Tony. Sorry.
What's that?
So the increases that you'll be going to council for is $800.
Right, but that doesn't, when we do
Yeah.
that doesn't include the additional plant, like whatever we end up planting over in that section and all of that. We can't just kill it and not put anything back.
You're
So
talking
then
about the sunflower area.
Correct.
In
wherever we
reality,
decide, yes.
Or also well, it's a question mark. I have a 1/4 acre of seed now that we can use.
Mhm.
And I may be getting another 1/4 acre of seed free that we could use in both locations. Now, they won't be sunflowers, but we could also, I think we could probably, I was going to say grow from seed, but buy plugs. Plugs are $3 each. It may not be that much to plant it. But you're right. If we're going to kill it off, we need to probably put something in there.
well, I think we ought to just keep the lily pond as one project.
Mhm.
And, if we're going to do the sunflower seed, that's a whole nother.
Well, I guess I just had them add that in because when we walked through, it seemed like we were talking about doing both sides of the path. And I thought we were talking about the lily pad project was both like the lily pond
Area.
and the other side of the path. It
Right.
doesn't have to be done, but I asked them to add that in case we wanted to include it.
Because
Well,
it's literally right
I don't
there.
want to speak on behalf of all the council, but I don't think we're talking about any huge money here.
No,
No, we're not. But I still have to have legislation correct. So I just need to know what you guys want to do.
Mayor, how much did you get appropriated from the Parkland Fund?
The
We
whole
appropriated
Parkland
all of
fund, there's roughly $100,000 in the Parkland fund. That is pretty much to do anything and everything, including park benches, trash cans, lily pond, anything that we decide to do over at the basketball court. And that is coming up quickly. Whether or not we're going to do anything, I don't even know if we can use it for surveillance or anything over there, but there's discussion of, the safety issues over at the basketball court and what we're going to do over in that area. But yeah, there's roughly $100,000 and that's to do anything, everything, plantings, trees that we decide to do, and any of the green space. So any additional park type things that we want to do. And
I
once
guess-
that money's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, I
Like
mean, I
there's
guess
no
my
replenishing.
thought would be if we've identified 8 areas of green space improvement, and if we can do one of them for $1,000 out of $100,000, then that's kind of a slam dunk in my opinion.
Mhm.
To go ahead and do, Go ahead and have them clear the area across the pond and for, another $100 buy, whatever kind of plantings that we can to put in that, picnic table area or whatever we're calling that. I mean,
Could we-
$1,000 seems real
I'm
reasonable.
sorry. Could we say, I mean, we're looking at 3375. Could we just say 4,000? And then if you don't use it, that gives us $700. Maybe, I don't know, the picnic table, the trash can could be included. I didn't include, oh, and the other thing is Beth came up with a wonderful idea to have a little bridge across the pond, which of course that cost isn't included, but I think that'd be lovely. But could you do something like that? Say, I don't know, 4,000 or whatever you'd say. And then if we decide not to tackle
Yes.
that, just don't spend it, or?
Exactly. What we'll do, and that's just where we have to figure out, and Tony, this is what the question came up. The reason that I need to know tonight is because we have to finish legislation tomorrow. So we can get the packets out Friday for the additional readings. If we can put it on the same legislation, we will do that. But since it's coming from two totally different funds, we may have to do a little bit of legislation a little different because one is a grant and one is coming. So I'm not sure exactly how they're going to have me do legislation, but if I can just get it done in a one swoop, we're already one reading in for both the appropriation and this project. I just have to fix the number on it. And yeah, I mean, I typically do that with anything that I'm going to say this on a live stream. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Anything I can get away with, I always round the number up. Just for the simple fact, you don't know what's going to happen. So I would prefer to do that. And then, yes, the money's, it just doesn't go anywhere. It just sits there.
I would do like if 4,000 is enough. Is that what we're looking for? That seems like a easily digested number.
And that would be the total. I mean, you've already got
Right.
2,596 for the grant. So you're not even, it's not even 4,000 really.
Well, right. Yeah, I get that. 2,500 of it's free money. So I would say, Mayor, that we, go to 4,500 or whatever.
Okay.
I don't foresee that being a holdup with anybody.
Yeah.
Does
So
anybody
yeah, I'll just figure out how they want me to do the legislation. And that's going to be however finance wants me to do it, because it's more about them making their life easy and not messing things up. So,
Not have to do it again.
and then have to do it again.
Does anybody not want to see 1,000 or less from the Parkland Fund go toward this project? Then I'm going to say, let's do it.
So
Perfect. And for the record, it does say planning and zoning recommended this. So in the legislation, I didn't take it out because I was banking on that. So, okay.
See, this one was still easy.
Yes, it is still easy.
So
But
Tiffany,
that said, I'm going to say this. She's going to be looking for some volunteers. Just
yeah. Probably around, I want to say it's like mid-April. Well, we're getting the trees mid-April, I think. We're going to need a lot of
more
volunteers.
people volunteering for stuff around here lately. I think with the new group of people in the new development, we've got a whole more enthusiastic neighborhood than in the last few years, that's for sure.
Should I be getting with Diane to explain the herbicide?
Yeah, you'll need to get her on board.
No, I mean, I'm always the one that gets in trouble for it, so just let me get in trouble for it. I mean, here's the end of it. At some point, if you want to get a job done, you just have to do it. If you want to, if you want to make this a 2-year project, then that's what we would have to. Like, is there anybody not on board with doing that? Like, is anybody going to literally have a nervous breakdown?
Well, maybe me, but
I know.
I'm not crazy about it, but I think it's the way to go.
Right. If you're on board, I'm on board.
I will just throw in that solarization is hit and miss. in everything that I've seen, if they're not going to give you a guarantee that it's going to work, and if they do give you that guarantee and it doesn't work, you're put off an entire other year because it can only be done on good hot summer days. So
Well,
it's
and she did mention that you can have some weed seeds come back up from that. I mean, the herbicide really is, I think, all around, except for the chemicals, it's the best way to go. So, yeah, I think you're right.
And to be fair, all she did is ask me what we were, I don't remember how she asked that, Tony, but she had asked like exactly what we were.
Said something about
And-
want to burn like a
Yeah.
sugarcane field or something.
I don't, maybe they can do that. I don't know.
Well,
That's
Lisa,
what I
if she
thought you
can get you the MSDS stuff on that, the manufacturers, information. on
MSDS?
it. Yeah, I
Okay.
forget what those initials stand for, but it's environmental,
Okay.
like material, what is that, MS? It's like the environmental qualifications of what's in
MSDS
that.
Material Safety Data Sheet.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. That's it.
Wow.
Good job,
That's
Tony.
impressive.
I've had to come up with some MFDS before my flooring career.
And honestly, other residents will probably want to know.
Yeah.
So it would be good just to have it on hand because
Yeah.
trust me, that clearly more people are going to ask the same questions. So that's actually all I had. I just wanted to make sure Monday I could actually move forward, get this, get this ball rolling. Keep the ball rolling.
Here, here.
All right.
I do have a question. I don't know if this is the time to ask. Is
yes.
that all right?
Almost 9 o'clock, so I'd say no, but we're going.
I think it'll be reasonably quick. So I had also mentioned the plant sale that's coming up and ordering some plants. I know, Tony, you had mentioned doing a kind of a fruit garden. And they do have some fruit plants. We have to order by 3/28, so by March 28. So is that
Is this part of the,
something we can wait to discuss? Or
is this the same people with the other trees that we're getting or something different?
this is different. This is the soil and water, Franklin Soil and Water.
But we have to pay for these, right?
We have to pay, it's minimal, like 5 raspberry bushes are $30, but I'm sure they're small. But they're $6 each. And you also have to buy 5. You don't have to buy 50, but you have to buy 5. So
I'd
is
like
that,
to see some berries of some kind.
I think
I
it'd be
would
nice.
agree.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe that's
but
something that council, or maybe that's just something that planning and zoning or, whoever can say. I mean, again, I would assume that we can use the parkland fund and that's not something we would have to go through council on because it's a very, if we're spending X amount of dollars, that's something that we could, again, I would hate for it just to be me and you all the time, but first we can go through and get a couple of those. But if planning and zoning can put together a list of things that they would like to see planted, I don't know why we couldn't spend a couple $100 out of.
These are sustainable plantings. Would they not be a perfect use for the Mary?
Berry
Oaks.
Oaks.
Mary
Yeah.
Oaks. Oh.
you could,
Right? Like, isn't this
That's-
exactly what she wanted it to be spent for?
yeah. They also have, Eddie was talking about white pines, a stand of white pines. Now, again, these are probably 2 feet, he might be thinking he wants, 10 feet, but they're also 25 for $30 or $25 for 30, something like that.
Well, and I've
So-
been trying to convince my wife to grow pawpaws for
Yeah.
my whole life, and
Are you doing it?
we're now at a house with no shade. So I'd love to put them somewhere in the village.
Oh, well, we have some in the village, but I'd love to put some more in too.
Can we access the Mary Yost Fund for a little bit of this? I mean, all of these come back every year and they bear fruit for the village, and
Tony is
haven't
all
thought-
about spending some of that money.
I've been trying to spend Mary's money for 10 years
I
now.
know. So yes, I do. As long, I mean, again, I feel like if we can get some people on board that can pick and choose a couple different things, I mean,
Mhm.
by all means.
So, but it's something we can wait until the next meeting to discuss. They need to be ordered by 3/28. That's not something we have to decide tonight.
No, we got 2 meetings before then.
Yeah, Eric,
Okay.
can you put that on the agenda for the next meeting?
Spend Mary Yost money? Yes.
Yes. And actually, just for the advantage of Samuel and Beth, can somebody just do a less than 1 minute explanation of these funds?
Tony,
Well, Mary Yost, back in 1999 donated, I think, $25,000 or $30,000 to the village for planting of trees and bushes, anything but annuals, I think was Mary's intent. And, we still have probably 20,000
Mhm.
plus, probably over 20,000 of the 25 or so that she had given us. So I think after 20 some years, we ought to, that's my thing, is that she did this in 99. I think 20 years is enough time to wait.
I
so I'm
would
gonna
say
make
we
it
have
my
spent
goal
some
to
of
spend
it.
it all.
You spent some, yeah.
Well, let's spend a little more.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, is there any other new business? No old business? Anybody have anything to add?
Have a good night. Stay warm.
Agree.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.
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 Night.